guys, it's Bernadette here, and today I just wanted to show you a couple of things about stamping. So I'm going to start off by showing you the supplies that I'm going to be using today. The first thing that I'm going to be using is this paper. It's called Spectrum Noir and Ultra Smooth Premium White Cardstock. It comes 10 sheets, 8.5 by 11, and it's 100% brightness. It's a 100-pound cover weight. Ultra smooth finish for professional results when used with alcohol-based markers. And the perfect surface for stamping and digital printing of images. And again, this is Crafter's Companion Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White Cardstock. I will leave the information in the description box below. So that's the first thing I'm going to be using. The second thing I'm going to be using is our two stamps from Crafter's Companion. And I don't know if they're still available, but it's Fairy House and some toadstools. Those are the two stamps. I'm going to be using my Tim Holtz scissors. These I'm going to be using for the background of the piece that I'm making. Now, these were gifted to me, so I don't know where they were purchased, but they work fabulous for blending ink, and I will show you that here in a second or two. But they do have similar brushes to these at the dollar store. So I have tried those as well, and they work really, really well for blending ink. I'm going to be using the Jane Davenport Squid ink in black and 3 ink pads. These are all by Crafter's Companion, also known as Spectrum Noir. They're the Harmony ink pads, and these are water-based. I'm going to be using Fuchsia, LemonTonic, and Pink Tulip. And again, I will place all this information in the description box below. So let's get started. Before I forget, I am going to be using a stamping positioner. This particular stamping positioner is manufactured by Tim Holtz, and I do not believe that it is available anymore. I know that Misty, M-I-S-T-I, still makes a stamp positioner, and I've heard nothing but good results about that one. So that's an alternative to this Tim Holtz stamp positioner. So what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be setting my cardstock down, and I had just placed a grid over the platform of this stamping positioner that has a sticky base, and I will put that information in the box below as well. But it is called Sizzix sticky grid sheets, and it holds thinlits and framelits perfectly in place during cutting. And so I will be using a little bit of that. And I am going to be using, I saved the scraps for a project just in case I need a scrap of paper, and I will show you what I use that for as well. So let's get started. I've already placed my paper down on the stamp positioner. Now, the reason I'm going to be stamping my image in this Squid ink today is I am going to be using Copic markers or alcohol markers, a mixture of different brands actually, to be painting my project today. And this is a hybrid ink pad. You can get these at Hobby Lobby, and also Tuesday Morning sells these ink pads as well, although they don't have all the colors all the time. So I would recommend getting it from Hobby Lobby instead. Anyway, it's a hybrid ink, and what that means is when you're going to be stamping, you need to figure out how you're going to be coloring your image in before you even get started, because that will play a part in the type of ink that you used to stamp with. So since this is hybrid ink, it doesn't matter if I color it in with alcohol markers or with water-based markers like Tombows, because it's a hybrid ink and it'll work with both without running. Now, if I used a water-based ink pad to stamp my image in, and then I decided I wanted to use a water-based marker like a Tombow, I would have a mess because they're both water-based. And if I used a pigment ink pad along with alcohol markers, I would have a mess as well because it would smear the image. So you have to cross over. If I want to use alcohol markers to color with, then I will want to use a hybrid ink pad or a water-based ink pad. Now, if I wanted to use Tombows or a water-based marker to color with, I would use a pigment-based ink. So that's the first step. But I like to make things easy for myself, so that's why I purchased the hybrid, because I know that it works with both types of alcohol markers and water-based markers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my image down where I want it. That looks good. Put it down a little bit lower there. There we go. And I'm going to close this. And then what I do is I take it off the hinge and I ink up the image. Place it down and just press lightly. We don't need to strong arm it here. Now that did not get the entire image, number one, and number two, it's not as dark as I would like it to be. So I'm going to re-ink it and stamp it again. That's the benefit of using a stamping platform, because if I had just used an acrylic block to stamp this with, it would be a guessing game to try to match up exactly where the image is. So that looks good for now. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to remove this card from the sticky, because we're done stamping it. And then I'm going to create a mask. And by that, I will show you exactly what I mean. I'm going to take a scrap piece of paper. Any type of paper will work for this, just any scrap that you have. And I am going to not re-ink my stamp again. I'm just going to quickly stamp the image on my scrap piece of paper. And as you can see, that image didn't show up very well at all, but that is fine. We don't have to worry about that. And you'll see why here in a second. So I'm going to move this out of the way for right now. The next step I want to do to create the mask is I want to cut this image out. So it has a lot of detail here on the sides with the grass. You do not have to fussy cut. and get every blade of grass out of there. That won't be a problem. You just want to kind of lightly go around it. And I'm just quickly cutting this out. Like I said, it does not have to be perfect. This is only going to be used for a mask, and I'll show you what that means here in a second. There we go. Mask is created. So I will explain now what a mask is used for, okay? So when you stamp, you have to decide which image you would like to have in the front and which images you would like to have in the background. So for this particular project that I'm doing, I want to have this fairy house in the foreground, and I'm going to put some toadstools in the background, and also I am going to be inking the background of this. So what I want to do is I want to take a piece of that sticky paper that I had. Oh, this one's not very sticky. It lost its stick. Let me grab another one. I'm just going to cut a fresh one. And you need just a tiny amount. Now, you don't need to do this step if you don't have this Sizzix sticky paper. That is fine. You can just hold the mask over your image. But, like I said, I like to do things the easy way. So, you could also use a piece of double-sided tape as well. That would work too, to hold your mask down while you're inking the background. So I am just going to stick this mask over the image, just line it up, stick it down, and now I'm ready to begin working on my background. So I'm going to start out with the color yellow, and I am going to tap my ink pad on the glass mat. This glass mat is also a Tim Holtz glass mat. I absolutely love it. I would be lost without it. So I'm going to take one of the brushes and just swirl my brush into that color, get it into the bristles, and start in the center and just lay that color down. And I'm working in circles because I want it to blend nicely and I don't want it to have any harsh lines in my finished project. So I'm starting with the yellow and just going lightly in circles. Now I do want there to be a variation of color, so I don't want the whole image to be that intense yellow. I want some variation, so I'm doing some spots brighter, like right here, and some spots in a more muted fashion on this side. And I'm really going to carry that out on this side, kind of far. There we go. And see how that mask is not moving just because of that little bit of sticky that I had? Then I'm going to wipe my brush off on a scrap piece of paper just to clean it so it'll be ready to go the next time I want to use it for a project. I'm done with the yellow. So then I am going to go to the light pink, and this is called Pink Tulip. And I'm going to do the same thing, just lightly tap it on my mat. Grab some on my brush. And just start blending those two colors together. It's almost making like a perfect sunset background, is what I would call this. And these brushes, once again, they work perfectly. They're found in the makeup department or makeup section of the dollar store. And they work good for makeup too, but I use mine for art. Okay, now that I have that lighter pink, now I'm going to go in with the darker pink, and this one is called Fuchsia. Now with this color, I am going to, and I'm going to use the same brush because it's in the same color family. I'm going to start, we've been starting from the inside out. With this one, I want the darkest color to be on the outside. So I'm going to start from the outside and work my way in, because I want it to be lighter on the inside. And I start in a circular motion off of my paper. If you notice, I start out here and then slowly move my brush in, because I do want a nice soft blend. Now I don't mind if the edges are darker. I do want that. That's kind of a nice effect. So I'm going to get some more ink, start off the paper in circular motion, blend it with that yellow and pink, make an orange color. So if you're doing this, you want to make sure that the colors you're using mix well together. You would not want to do red and green, for example, because they're opposite on the color wheel, and you would make an ugly mud color. Okay, I think I'm going to call that good. I'm going to just go in this area with a little bit more pink. There. That looks quite nice. Now you're going to see why I covered it up with the mask. As you can see, it protected that image perfectly, and there is not a drop of ink on there, so we can go ahead and color it in now. Now right here, I would like a little bit of yellow, so I'm going to go back with this brush and just lightly put some color in those areas where the mask was a little bit off. There we go. Done. So we're done with our ink. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use alcohol markers to color my image in. So I'm going to start with, I think I'm going to start with the mushroom on top. And I'm going to start here at the bottom where I want it to be darkest. And I am using Spectrum Noir markers. Right now, this is DR3. Then I'm going to switch to Copic. I love Copic markers. They're the best. I love the brush tip, but they're expensive, so I'm not a slave to a particular brand. if I find another brand of alcohol markers that are on sale, I'm more than happy to give them a try and see if they work. So I'm going into a little bit of a lighter red, and then I'm going in with Copic RV21, and these are the Copic Chows. And I'm just mixing that in with the red, and you can see it creates a great shading effect. Now I'm going to do the same thing again on these other two mushrooms. And if you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to color images, shading, etc., I'd be more than happy to make that video for you as well. Just let me know in the comment section below. And I'm going over it with the pink. And see how that just blends perfectly. Then I am going to do the windows. I'm going to start out, I personally, when I color with alcohol markers, I've heard start with the light, go to the medium, and then the dark. Or start with the dark, then go to the light, and continue with the medium. So my stance is on it, just practice. Come up with your own style, because I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. I personally like to start with the darkest color and then lighten it up with the mid-tone and then the lightest color. And in this situation, I'm just using two colors because the windows are so tiny. Now I'm going in with the Spectrum Noir CT3, and that was the Spectrum Noir OR1. And I color over the original color that I put down because I want to soften it up. I don't want there to be any harsh lines. So I'm just going back and adding this yellow so it looks like the lights are on in the fairy home. Oh, I forgot these two little windows up here. They're so small, I'm just going to use this one color. Okay, I don't think I missed anything else. Next, I'm going to color the grass. So I'm going to go in with Spectrum Noir DG3. And I am going to start just at the bottom or the base of the grass and flick my marker out. Start at the base of the house and just flick. And the key to alcohol markers is just doing small areas at the same time. You don't want to do like a whole large area, because by that time the marker will have dried and it'll be harder for you to blend it out. So I just do a small area at a time. And then I'm going to finish with this CG1, and I had just used DG2. And as you can see, they're all blended very nicely. I'm going to do the same thing on this side and around, and I'm going to go a little quicker now since you've seen how I do it. And I'm not a stickler for where the shading goes. As long as you have a general idea, you know, to put the darkest color where things overlap or on the bottom, and then go from there. As long as you have a variation of really dark and light colors, I think it looks just fine. One thing about these markers that I wish that the lids would fit, but they don't. That would be a nice thing to have, because when I'm coloring like this, I don't want a bunch of loose lids on my table and then I have to go and match them back up, because if I'm doing a really, you know, specific blend or whatever, sometimes I will leave my markers uncapped just while I'm working on that one area. So there we go. The grass is all done. Now to do the shell of the house. I'm going to use Artist Loft. I got these from Michael's. Oh, no, sorry. These are Studio 71. I ordered them online on from Amazon. And I am going to start here with the lightest color now, because this dark brown can get away from a person very, very quickly, and I don't want it to be all dark brown. Now I'm going to show you a trick. Instead of going in on the paper, I'm creating a mid-tone by coloring on my mat with the alcohol marker. Then I'm going in with the lighter color and I'm picking it up, and you're going to see it picks up some darker color, and then it mixes it on its own with the lighter color, and then you get a mid-tone. So it's a nice little trick. And I didn't grab it, but I'm going to need a darker brown, so I'm going to have to grab a darker brown, but I'll do that in a second. And then the darkest areas I will use, let's see, this is a pretty dark brown. This is EB8 Spectrum Noir. Yeah, that's a nice chocolatey brown. And I'm going to do the same thing. Pick some of that color up with the lightest color. And I'm just going to go here where it's darkest. And add just a little bit of that dark color lightly. And I notice when I color, I tend to flick a lot. And I'm going to color off on a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to go back in and just smooth out that area. See how nicely that looks? It looks like it's recessed in there. And no matter what images you're using to stamp with, if you shade and color like this, it'll take your project to that next level, because I really believe it is the key to making an image look good, is by shading. I need to pick up some more of that darkest brown there. Now, if you're an expert at coloring, please feel free to fast forward this part of the video, but I want to include it at normal speed because I may have a couple of subscribers that their forte isn't coloring, and they might want to watch and see how I color this image. So feel free to fast forward this part. There we go. Now, just for a different tone, I think I'm going to use this mid-tone brown a little bit, just to give it a little bit of variation. And I'm going over the dark areas. And then with the lightest shade, I am going to go over the areas that I had not colored yet. And I'm blending those two together. Now I'm mixing both colors. Just going around the edge there. You know, this isn't scientific. I mean, this is art after all, and play and have fun with it. Don't be afraid of it. I have to keep telling myself that all the time because I tend to be very precious with my supplies, and that's good on one hand and bad on the other hand, because I'm desperately afraid to waste a piece of paper or if I mess something up, but I'm trying to remind myself that it's all a learning process. And if I had fun while I was doing it, then it wasn't a waste of paper or ink or paint or whatever the case may be. Now, one thing I would suggest, if you are going to use, well, actually, it doesn't matter what you're using to color with. I would use the right paper for the job. So, for example, this said that this paper that I'm using is for alcohol markers, and that's what I am using to color it in with, are alcohol markers. Because this paper is coated and it's specifically engineered so that it won't soak up all of your expensive alcohol ink. I just realized I missed a spot here. So I'm going to go back and grab some of that color. I was thinking that was a rock, but it's not. It's part of the shell. There we go. Now for the rocks, I'm going to do the same thing. These are Studio 71 markers. I wouldn't necessarily recommend these markers. They were inexpensive, but the tips don't last quite as long. So I wouldn't reinvest my money in them. Same technique, getting the lighter color and picking up the darker shade. And then going over it with the light. There we go. Now I'm going to get the marker, the darkest brown, which was the EB8, and I'm going to go over the dark wood part of the windows. I apologize if you can hear coughing in the background. My husband has a little bit of a cold. He's been coughing. As a matter of fact, didn't sleep well last night because, poor guy, he was up a lot, just coughing, coughing, coughing. And then this has like a little shelf. So I'm going to outline that. And then I'm going to go in with the mid-tone brown and color the top of that shelf. Areas like this are so tiny that as long as you use a dark and a light color, it'll look good. There we go. Now my image is all colored in. It is time to add the toadstools now. So instead of using the stamp positioner for this, I'm going to show you how I would use the acrylic block. Let's see if this block is big enough. Yeah, that should work. Okay. My stamp is on the acrylic block. I'm going to use the mask again, and I'm going to put the mask over our image. Press that sticky down. Then I want the toadstools to be nice and dark. So I am going to use the Squid black again to ink those up. Now once again, we are putting the mask on because we want these toadstools to appear like they're beside and behind the fairy house. So I'm going to stamp partially over that mask. Then I'm going to put some here on the side a little lower. I don't want them to be in a row. It wouldn't look natural. Once again, inking it up. And I'm going to put some toadstools right here over the mask. So I'm stamping on the mask and on the card. Oops. I missed that, but that's not a big deal. I can go in with a pen and color it since it's black. There we go. All done with the toadstools. Now I have to fix my mistake. To do that, I'm going to be using a Art and Fly line drawing pen in 03. And I got most of it. So I just have to draw that shape in. Not a big deal. You won't even be able to tell. There we go. Okay, now the fun part, to reveal what we have. There is our finished project. And see how it looks like the fairy house is in front of the toadstools, especially on this side. And it just gives more depth and it looks like a nice little scene. And then of course, actually, one more thing before I am done. I'm going to add a fairy, but I'm going to show you the difference between stamps. So when you're in the stamp store and you like a specific stamp, you're going to be able to tell if it's going to color the image or if you're going to leave the image blank so that it can be colored in. I will show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to stamp this because these are hard to see. They're so tiny. So I'm just going to ink this up and stamp it on a scrap piece of paper just to show you what I mean. So this is a fairy stamp. And when you stamp this fairy, it's just the silhouette. There's nothing to color in. Okay, and that looks like that. This one, on the other hand, is part silhouette, and then there's also a part that you can color in on the wings. And this one looks, did I get that? Yep, okay. And that looks like that. See how you can tell that the wings, there's no rubber there, so that's the part you're going to be able to color in. And let's see, which one should we add? I think I'm liking the little fairy that's colored in. Let's just add her to our project here. We're going to put her, let me move this out of the way. And we'll put her right there at an angle. There we go. Now she's all done. Now, this project is completed. Now to finish it off, what I would do is I would take a white pen if I can find one. Here's a white pen. And this is an Art and Fly white gel pen. And believe me, I've had a love-hate relationship with gel pens. And this Art and Fly gel pen works really well. I'm very impressed. And I would just add some white highlights to the windows just to make it look like the light is bright and makes you kind of wonder what's in that fairy house. There's someone there looking out the window at us, maybe. Then I'm going to add some little white dots to the toadstools. And adding these little extra touches on your project really makes a difference. And it only takes a second. See how cute that looks? So I can't resist. I have to add some little white dots around her because she needs some pixie dust for sure. There. That looks adorable. Let me put this on a white surface so you can see without the distraction of those colors. And you can see our final project. So there you go, guys. I hope I answered some questions that you had about stamping, maybe coloring, and what kind of ink to use as well. So thank you so much for watching my video. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Also, please hit the like button. And if you'd like me to do any other videos for you, please don't hesitate to leave that in the comments below. Thanks, and until next time, guys, bye.